So, welcome everyone. I know there are a few new faces here this evening. My name is Anita Thompson, and I own Art Venture Workshops. I'm a mobile based art business. I teach mostly for libraries, they are my favorite. But I also teach for rec centers and Autism Cares Foundation, and I do some corporate events as well. But it's my pleasure to be here this evening. We're going to create a mixed media bird's nest for this evening. So what we're going to do first is we are going to draw our eggs first. And then what we'll do is we will start to use the watercolor. Oh, and I just realized my camera. No, okay, it's good. I thought my camera switched for some reason. So we're still good. So we need to use our pencil. And basically, if you want to create the eggs first, we will do that. Or actually, you know what? Let's create the circle that is going to be the interior of the eggs. Hi, Maria.
Hi,
How are you?
good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm going to put the information in the chat. We just started recording, but I'm going to put this in here for you so you can see it. So good to see you. Okay. So what we're doing first is we are drawing the interior circle of the nest. And then we're going to put our eggs inside of that. And you want this to be just enough so that you can see it. We will be eventually covering it up in colored pencil because we're going to use watercolor first. And then when it dries, this will all have colored pencil on top of it. So I'm making my circle about in the middle of my page. I want to make sure that I have enough room for the outside of the nest. So you want to make sure to do that. And then when you are ready, you can draw the eggs, which are, I used just 3. If you want to add more or less, that's fine. But I felt like 3 was a pretty good number. I'm going to make these kind of overlap. This one maybe. I didn't in my other one, but I will in this one. You can arrange them any way you like. So we're just creating ovals. You also want to make sure that after you create the shapes, that you lighten up your pencil marks. Although, again, in this particular watercolor that we're doing, it doesn't matter as much because we're going to be adding the colored pencil. I'm just kind of fixing my ovals here, at least this one. Adjusting the size of my nest here, at least the interior of it. Make it a little bit wider. Okay. So this is a very, I think, a rather easy drawing. We do everything with the pen, or I'm sorry, with the paint and the colored pencil. And so once you have this down, we're going to start creating the colors around the nest. And so basically what we're doing is we're adding watercolor around here, and then we're going to be adding watercolor for the eggs. The colors that we're going to use for around the nest, the first color is going to be yellow. And so basically what we're doing is we're just creating a circle of yellow. And what you can do is you can start to make it look like a nest by kind of creating some lines that are coming away from the circle you make. But I like to make the yellow rather circle-like at first. And so I'm doing that now. So it looks pretty bright. And we're going to keep expanding that circle because that is our nest. So again, your first layer is yellow. And our next one is going to be sort of a yellowish orange. I'm just kind of cleaning off my palette here with water so that I can mix my next color. So again, the next color is going to sort of be yellow and orange combined so that you're going to kind of get a golden, kind of a golden yellow. You can kind of see that right here. And so this is where you're going to start to create lines on top of the yellow. And you're going to create it as if it's pieces of, like hay and, basically make it start to look like a bird's nest. I'm going to make this a little bit darker so that you're able to see it. So you see how I am going into the yellow, but then I'm pulling the color out so that it's starting to look almost wreath-like or nest-like. Also, if anyone has any questions or needs me to focus a little closer, especially, for the new people, just let me know in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and let me know. So we're making that nest bigger. Our next color, we're going to start to get darker, is going to be brown. Oh,
And
okay.
we lost your picture.
Oh, can you see it now or no?
No, it says Charlie's share screen, so Charlie somehow got into it.
Oh.
Yeah, you're in a little thumbnail.
Oh, okay. Let's see.
I think Charlie might need to get out and go back in again.
Yeah, let's oh, that's so strange. I thought that was strange. Okay, Charlie, I'm gonna have to kind of all right, let me see something here. Sorry, guys. Hold on.
Okay. Okay, let me see if I can come back in and,
Yeah,
okay?
that would be great. Because I know if I remove you, apparently I can't add you back
Yeah.
in. Yeah, okay. Thank you. That's interesting. I didn't even know that other people could do that.
You're back.
All right, thank you. I'll have to, I've never had that happen. I will have to research that. I'm sure there's a setting where I can disallow anyone to share. So I will, so sorry about that, guys. But your next color is brown. So you should be able to see that basically the brown is starting to cover on top of the yellow. And we're expanding it to make the nest bigger. And you kind of want to make the nest underneath rather big. Let me fix my... And the next color that you want to do is a darker brown, which is going to be black and brown combined if you're using the basic, you know, sort of like the Crayola. Okay. Oh, there's Charlie. Hey, Charlie. Okay, so we've just added a combination of brown and then black and brown, and we are just expanding out that layer of the nest. So we're going to be going on top of it as well, remember, with the colored pencils. So you can also use black or gray. The black comes out as gray in the Crayola. So I'm now going to start to add a little bit of the black. And here again, you know, you can make it very light by adding water so that it looks more like a wash. And you should be making it out to look like it's, you know, sticks or hay. So you can see that I'm rotating around and making lines, but making them in a circular fashion. And then once you have that completed, you want to draw your attention to the eggs. Of course, before that, I forgot that I like to make a few strands of the nest, sort of really kind of hanging out like so. I'm using black to do that with. Add one here. Okay. So again, and afterward, we're going to create the shading for the eggs, which is going to be, you can do a combination of the blue, and you can add some green if you like. I only used blue on on my original, but I think I'm going to mix some green in. And so basically what you want to do is, when using watercolor, you want to push around the color very slowly, at least with the eggs. You're really using that water. You know, think of the brush as a pencil. It's the best way that I can describe how to get the watercolor to kind of do what you want. So I'm thinking about, you know, the shading. And then from that, I'm going to now start to add water and move that color into the rest of the egg, but leaving a portion of each egg, a little bit of the white of the paper. So you can see that these eggs are looking a little more green. I am going to add some more blue, but you want to do that to each egg. So again, it's as if your brush is the, like the pencil or the colored pencil. You can add some more turquoise or blue. Mostly around the edges for the shading. I'm going to add some more to this one. The great thing about watercolor is you can layer, but you have to start off very light, using more water than anything. Okay, and I'm going to go around the other egg. And here again, we're also going to use the pencil to make this even more interesting. Add a little more shading here since it's right up against this egg. Just have fun with it. Kind of like these colors. And you can add some gray in there too, if you like, which would be, a little bit of the black. You could also add a little bit of brown. I'm going to add just a little bit of brown here, adding some spots. So you can add some speckles using the tip of your brush. Again, we're also going to go back and we are going to add splattering as well. Again, this one's a little different than my original as far as the coloring goes. But the original would be doing the same, just different colors, using the blue, just the blue, and then using gray instead of brown. Doing a little bit of outlining, but we are going to go in again, especially inside the nest. We're going to be using our colored pencils. And remember, if you want a little bit lighter, you add water and just a little bit. If you want it darker, you use more of your paint. And so now we're going to let this dry. And so what I like to do is kind of bounce it up and down. Now, as long as you are, happy with your watercolor at this point, because our next step is going to be starting in with the colored pencil. So when you're finished with this part and you're happy with it, you want to dry your painting. And I do it by bouncing it up and down. You can grab a hair dryer if you want, but we don't have a whole lot of watercolor on here. So I think the sort of bouncing up and down should be just fine. It's a shame it's not summer. We could be fanning ourselves with this. And basically, in order to tell it's dry, just kind of rotate it under your light. And you shouldn't see too many more wet spots. Give it another minute or two. And you can let your watercolors rest for now, because we are going to get into our colored pencils. So our colored pencils that we're going to be using next are going to be, first we're going to add a bit of yellow, and we're basically going to be concentrating in the center here around our eggs. So we're going to be using yellow, brown, black, and gray. Basically, we're going to be layering the colors around here first and making it darker in certain areas, going over it in black afterward. And then we're going to expand that, and we'll go into the actual nest afterward. But first, we'll also go into the eggs. The nest will be last. And then finally, we will add some, some more paint with some splattering. So let's now focus on the center here around the eggs. The first thing I like to do, though, is outline the eggs with colored pencil. And so let's outline those first in gray. If you don't have gray, you can use brown, because we're going to be using this anyway, using all these colors. So basically just kind of going around each of the eggs. You can go around the color you want, and you're just creating a little bit more of a permanent and darker line around these. And then when you're done with that, you're going to take your, golden yellow and color in around the eggs. Mine broke, so I just have to resharpen it. There we go. So as far as the pressure is concerned, you want to lightly color in. You should still be able to see, especially because we're using watercolor paper, you should still be able to see the texture and a bit of the white of the paper. We just want a layer of yellow underneath. And again, for right now, we're just doing the center of the nest where the eggs are.
Anita, I'm sorry.
Yes.
What was
That's okay.
outlined in brown?
In gray, the
Oh, in gray.
the eggs.
The
Mhm.
eggs? Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and I said if you don't have gray, you can use brown. Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm a little behind, so.
No
Okay, thank you.
worries. You're welcome. No worries at all. Yeah, because we're going to be adding brown to it. We're going to be adding all these colors. So our next color is actually going to be brown. And so we especially want to start off sort of right outside of the circle. We want to use brown for that. So we're basically now outlining the inside circular area of the nest. So you can kind of see what that looks like. I'm just kind of outlining it with the brown. And when you're done, you're going to start building up that brown. But you're going to start doing it in such a way that just like how we painted the outside of the nest with strokes of color, you're now going to be going around the nest with the brown as if you are still kind of making those strokes of color. So you can see that the yellow is still showing through from how we did it before, you know, or adding on the yellow colored pencil. It should be still shining through. So you can probably see how it's going to start to create, you know, the texture on top of the watercolor is going to start to create the dimension for the bird's nest. So we're now going to, we created this layer of the brown, and we're now going to really start to build up the inside by layering the colored pencils. So we're going to grab our yellow one more time. And we're going to go on top of the brown. And we're thinking now as if we're adding individual strokes. So like this. And we're pressing hard. You can scribble a bit in order to get some of that yellow in there. So this is where we're going to start scribbling and building up the texture by applying a heavier hand. So that was with yellow. And then we're going to pick up the brown again when you're ready. This is going to create dimension and depth inside your nest. So we're now going to take our brown and we're going to outline and kind of color around each of our eggs. And just take your time. Also, because the paper is bumpy, you have to kind of take your time and apply some pressure. Now, once you have your eggs covered in the brown, you're then going to start coloring very darkly right around the eggs, because this would be where the nest is pretty dark. So we're going to fill in, and it doesn't have to be where you've covered the entire area. Like, some yellow can still shine through. You can see that right here. But you're going to go around all 3 of the eggs. You're going to expand a bit of your coloring as you're going around. And so it should look a little something like this. And now once you start, or once you have, I should say, once you have that filled in, you're now going to start expanding a bit of your coloring and making it more circular. So you may have to color a little more coming kind of around the eggs, and then expanding around, expanding the brown into the surrounding areas. And then we're going to start branching out and literally creating individual twigs. But first, we're filling in the circular area around the nest, or around the eggs, I should say. you want to have at least maybe half an inch to an inch of an area that is colored in around your eggs. And this is with the brown. And then when you're ready, you're going to pick up your black. And so the way we're going to do this, in order to make it look like there are certain areas that are darker, is here again, we're going to outline our eggs in the black. As you're outlining, you probably have to kind of double over it as you're trying to outline because of the texture of the paper. But we're going to then be coloring in the darker areas, which are in the middle of the eggs and kind of surrounding it. But first we outline the eggs in the black. So it should now look a bit darker right around the eggs. And then you're now going to start coloring in using your black, going very dark right around your eggs. So where we added the brown, you're now going to start to add a bit of the black. And as you're coloring, you can make it messy because we're trying to now mimic the kind of twigs and, hay, whatever our little bird has picked up to make the nest. And so you can kind of scribble. But you definitely want to make it darker right around each of the eggs and in the middle of the eggs here. So almost like a shadow. So you should be able to see that right around the eggs on mine, it's pretty dark with the black. And then when you're ready, you're going to take that black, still going around that circular area that we kind of portioned off for the center of the nest. You're going to then start adding the black, but again, kind of making it so that it looks like it's strokes on top of strokes. Staying in the brown, the brown section for now, covering it with black. You can hear me lifting up my pencil and then applying, the pressure. And then you can start as you're going around the nest to create, strokes that are kind of starting to come out of that brown area, the brown area that's now black. And when you're ready, you're then going to take that blue color. That is the sky blue. And you're going to then go on top of all of those colors that you added, the black, the brown. And you're now going to kind of mix it by adding a layer of this sky blue. It's going to add a different dimension to the inside of your nest. You are now coloring rather heavily. You can hear my stuff on my desk squeaking. Sorry about that. You can also add some gray if you want. Gray is going to be the next color that we use as we start to expand. Basically, you want the center of the nest to be rather solid looking color. The rest of the nest is not going to look solid looking, except for what we painted underneath. So we are now going to start building up all of our twigs. And so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be just like we did with the paintbrush, with the brush. We're going to be taking each pencil and we're going to be going in a circular motion, layering on top of the watercolor that we created. And I'm using gray at first. It's very light, so it may not show up a whole lot, but we're going to start to build up our nest. And you can start to expand again on the outside of the nest. So again, this is our gray. And so I'm taking it and creating sort of broken up curved lines, but they're kind of wiggly. And then we're going to take our brown. So the other thing is you could use orange as well. If you have another color of brown, like if you have like a sienna kind of brown, you can use that too. If you only have brown, that's okay. But if you have like an orangey brown, you can grab that right now. Also, again, if you don't have that orangey brown, you can also add orange. So I forgot to add that because I think that'll give it another layer of some nice color. So I'm going to grab an orange or a sienna. which is an orangish brown. Let's see. You can also use a light brown if you have it. So this is this is sort of this is light brown. And again, it's just going to add another layer, and you're going to do the same thing that you did with the gray. You're going to now start adding those lines, those wiggly lines, right, as we build our nest. Going around and around. You know, the other thing you might want to do, you can kind of start to scribble around your original, the black and brown area. You can start to scribble a little bit of that orangey brown around before we start to add our brown. So the other thing is you can start to make twigs that look like, you know, there's like a line and then maybe a smaller twig off of it. That would look like, I'm gonna do this one here. I'm gonna do it on the back here to show you. So what I mean is, as you're doing twigs, you could do something like that. Right, make a little portion and, you know, kind of build up your nest that way. So when you're ready, take your brown and you're going to start layering. And we're just building up from light colors to darker colors. And when you're ready, you're going to grab your black. And so what we're going to do with the black, so I'm going to show you the original here. So there are spots around this that I've taken the black and I've scribbled. These are basically kind of scribbled lines going all the way around the nest. So we're going to do that, and that's with our black. You can add the brown with that too, but we're really going to start the scribbling with the black. We're really darkening up our nest. So grab your black, and I like to start from the inside going outward. So it's like these are, you know, kind of like pieces of debris. And you're going to keep going around the nest doing this. And at the same time, also adding more branches or twigs. You know, you can do a little bit of coloring using the black coming from the original area that we colored in black. But we're now just darkening up on top of the nest here. And this is where, if you want to add more brown at this point, you could. You can add some more scribble. You know, this is where you can really start to add either the darkening colors. Maybe you want to add a little more yellow. You can do that too. I'm going to come in and add some yellow kind of around the edges here. So I'm now kind of scribbling using my brown a little bit. I'm scribbling and then I'm also making more strokes, you know, more lines to make it look like it's a nest. And then on top of all that, you can continue to add. You're going to go back in with your blue. And then if there's any spots that you want to darken up before we start to splatter, you want to do that now. Again, I like to go back in with my black and really make it dark right around the eggs. We are also going to finally do a little shading on the eggs before we start to splatter. Okay. And so if you want to go back in using your sky blue, you can even go in with a bit of your brown with your colored pencil. You can add a little bit of shading on top of the watercolor by adding some very light shading. I'm using strokes Again, this is with, I'm going to go in really close now. And I might add a little bit of some of the brown here. And then when you're ready, our last step is going to be splattering with the black. And so basically, to get lighter splatter, well, we're going to use water and black. And you're going to get a lot on the point of the brush. And then you're going to start to tap it. Now, if it doesn't come out, you're going to add more water and then start to tap it.
I'm sorry, Anita, is that black or dark brown?
Yeah, this is black. Mm-hmm.
Black.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You could use, you know what, you could use brown too, along with the black, but I used black originally.
Okay, just a little water and the color and then splattering.
Yep. So what you're going to do is you're going to literally hit the edge of your brush right above, and you may want to, have to cover your surroundings a bit.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Me being an art person, some of my stuff is already splattered. If I was doing it in my living room, I definitely wouldn't be doing it in my living room. But if I was, I'd be covering stuff. But so, let's see, I'm just hitting it, going around. I may try some yellow mixed with brown for another splatter. That's kind of might be a really neat splatter too. Yeah, it is. Yeah, you gave me an idea. I added a little bit of brown. Thank you. So I'm adding a little bit of brown mixed with some yellow. So it doesn't just have to be one splatter. Here's a little bit of golden brown. And you can even go and dot, using your brush. You can add some splatter that way too. And even, a little bit more than splatter, like taking your brush. Making mine just a little bit bigger here. Now going around and adding just a little bit more color using the water. And I'm now mixing a little bit with the colored pencil. Not a step you have to do, but I kind of like that look of having it a little bit softer around the edges. Okay. All right, I'm just putting in my email address in the chat. If anyone's interested in being added to the newsletter, I have a weekly newsletter. I have one coming out tomorrow. It's usually on Mondays, but not always. So it'll come out tomorrow. But I'm going to remove my spotlight if you're interested in showing your beautiful nest. And I'm going to stop the recording as well.